Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for our multi-cloud live stream today. Just a reminder for everyone, if you're joining us, that these are every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays with new speakers and topics each time. This month is dedicated to security. So each session has a topic dedicated to different aspects of multi-cloud security. The recordings are also hosted on our VMware Cloud YouTube channel. So if you didn't catch them live, you can catch those on demand. And stay up to date with all of the latest. So today we have Hadar here with us again. So if you didn't check out our last session, you can see that on demand. But for those who didn't catch it, do you mind just introducing yourself and providing a little overview of what we'll cover today?
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. So today we're going to cover operating security in the public cloud. So, it's great when we get those alerts or get that information, but then what? What have we seen customers do that's been effective? What are some steps to think about when you're, going from maybe a centralized security team to a distributed security team, and then how to leverage Secure State to help you with that process. And for those who don't know, I'm a cloud security architect for VMware. I've been with VMware for about 8 years now, a little over. And I used to be a security architect at a large financial prior to joining VMware.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, can you kick us off and then we can get right into it?
Sure. Let me share a little bit.
Yep.
I'm going to do a quick little slide. Let's see. Do that. We do that.
And just for anyone who's joining us too, please feel free to jump in and ask any questions you have in the comments, and we'll make sure that we will address those on the call.
Right. Otherwise, David has to ask all the questions, and Lauren, and so
Yeah, exactly.
They're great, but you might have some other questions you might want to ask.
Exactly.
So thanks. So one of the things we see when on the I have this in my last slide or my last deck when I presented, is that the move to public cloud has created a great increase in acceleration in deployment speed and sometimes ease from an IT developer standpoint, but it also has created a lot of complexity. And so customers are constantly trying to figure out how to manage public cloud, because it is different than your data center. Just the way things are moved through the cycle from build to production, your isolated groups where you have, your silos of your, here's my firewall team, my network team, my storage team, my dev team, my storage team, whatever. In the cloud, that's one team, possibly. And so, everybody trying to do security or compliance or, costing, those are all somewhat more complex. And done at such a rapid speed that you really do need something to be able to manage something at cloud speed. And so when customers first move into public cloud, it typically used to be, it'd be a small little project, it'd be one account, one developer put their credit card on, started it. But that quickly grows, right? And more organizations are having mandates to move more of their workloads to the public cloud. Some of them are saying, I want 50%, some saying 90, who knows, right? It's somewhere in between. We have the hybrid cloud data center as well and the on-prem, but we're seeing a big move towards that. And so we're also seeing that customers are not sticking to one cloud. It could be AWS, it could be Azure, it could be GCP, it could be Oracle, Alibaba. We're seeing multi-clouds. And as soon as you start going into more than one account or more than one provider, visibility becomes the number one problem that we see, right? I say cost is probably along with that as well, but visibility and visibility, also leads to security. Like you can't secure what you can't see. And so when we're trying to talk to customers about this maturity, and we'll get to the operation side of this, but this is really how it kind of leads to it, is like, first you have to gain visibility, and you have to really gain the visibility and give that visibility to the right users, the end users, right? It can't all go to your central security team, because they don't really get it. They don't know what's going on necessarily. They're probably not as cloud aware as the developers or the cloud center of excellence. And so you got to get that visibility, not only to understand, but you also have to get it out to your end users so they can see when they're creating things that are high risk or not appropriate.
Yeah, and just follow on comment there with the security teams. I mean, you and I know that most organizations, they're fairly small. They just can't they can't handle the operational load, right? So
Yeah.
they need to offload things to other organizations.
Oh yeah, I think there was a study recently that said for every security analyst, there's 100 developers.
Yeah.
And so there, more and more organizations are enabling and empowering developers to deploy as they need, right? Any cloud, anywhere you want, go for it, because that's making the company money, right? That's where they have success.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a security perspective, if you're an analyst trying to keep up with that speed and you're the bottleneck, you're never going to be above water. You're always going to be, 3 days too late or a week or never get to it.
And businesses just don't tolerate. They used to be more tolerant of it in the data center, right, where security was the bottleneck. It just doesn't happen when public cloud. They just blow through it.
No, not at all. And
yeah.
I worked at a place where you would have a change ticket and be like, okay, Tuesday nights we do firewalls, and you'd get on the call with the firewall team, and they would open up the port, and then you would test to make sure that the application's working. And you're like, okay, we're good. Okay, next ticket.
Right.
That's, could you imagine that in public cloud? That doesn't happen, right? It's like click. Okay, I'm good. Oh, it didn't work.
It's out there. It's out there. The public's got access to it.
Right. Well, and let's be honest, as we're moving to this DevSecOps idea and model, we have to educate developers about security. Right. They are trying to make their application work. So in terms of that firewall example, you open it up and it's supposed to be this port, and for some reason it doesn't work. Well, guess what? My next move will be
another port.
or all ports. I want to make sure. Oh, look, it works, and then we'll close it later, and then you just explode yourself, right? And so
all ports. That's great.
Yeah.
This one doesn't work. All ports.
All ports always work for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, and so as you're trying to operationalize, your first thing is going to be visibility, of course. The second thing we see really is around governance. So now that you've gained this visibility, what rules do you want to enforce? What's your policy? What works for you? What are you regulated on? Maybe do you want to go beyond that? Maybe you have your own standard that you want to meet. Defining that, and that's actually from an operational perspective, it's a really good tool to force security, governance, development, IT to kind of have a conversation, because you want to standardize and have feedback from all those groups to figure out what that level is that you need to be. What's our policy? Can you have 22 open to the world if it's only for a marketing server? Or can I, do I need to encrypt my storage, my S3 buckets, if it's marketing data only? Right? Those are all things that you need to have conversations about to help define that governance. Once you have those in place, then you can start moving towards, automating and shifting left and so forth.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, when you're starting the conversation about operating security in the public cloud, the first thing you really need to do, and it seems simple, but it's much more complex than you think, is that who owns it? Who owns public security in your organization? Who's responsible for it at the end of the day? If something happens, you're in the newspaper, whose head's going to get chopped or going to get the heat, whatever you want. I was going to be more graphic, but I decided probably not to use those other terms, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. The knock on security has always been, it's everybody's problem and it's nobody's problem, right?
Yes.
It's in everything, but nobody seems to really own it.
Yeah, and I think it's even worse in public cloud, because the typical security owners are sometimes not involved in public cloud, at least initially. So it's a different group. And if it's, if you're enabling your developers, are they responsible for the security of what they deployed? Is it your security operations team? Is it your cloud center of excellence team? And then if you find something, who should get that alert? Who follows up? What's that process like? So these are really critical things to develop and decide within your organization. And it's different for different orgs, and it will change over time as you grow and, and things of that nature. But it is really important to understand who's responsible for it. And you can see here, we have a little survey from, who's responsible. And you can see IT ops sometimes has, 28% sometimes versus information security in this example, which is really interesting, right? Because ops typically doesn't, in the data center, security really wasn't their thing. But in public cloud, sometimes it is, or at least they perceive it to be, or they're the only ones that are part of it, and so that's why you're owning it.
And it's interesting to me too that the application owners or the developers are not responsible, or primarily responsible, at least from this research, for cloud security, when they are usually one of the closest people to the configurations, and could be the quickest to resolve or to identify potential misconfigurations leading to a security risk.
Oh, for sure.
So.
Yeah, and this is funny because this is from 2019, and you can see they're only 6%. We'll see. I mean, I would love to see this updated version of this, maybe when it comes out in 2021 with if this percentage has changed. But I think to your point, like developers, I've been, the shift left and DevSecOps and all that is very cute, but like reality of that, I think from this survey, is not quite where we would like it to be.
It's funny you mentioned that, because we actually have I believe this is with the Cloud Security Alliance research. So we actually have a report that we partnered with them on some new research for 2021. So we should have this information out in the next couple months.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that report. And so one last thing I want to say, the other thing that's key, and then we'll kind of show you how to kind of do some of this in the product, is communication. So you figured out who's responsible, who needs to be known. Well, then the problem can be is like, you don't want to flood them with too much information that's useless or they don't care about, or just too much. Let's be honest. Like, you have to take a risk-based approach about who should be communicated to and at what level, and what of that could you maybe remediate automatically or install guardrails, and what do you actually want to send an email or Slack or some sort of alert to say, hey, you just did this, please undo it because you've introduced this risk. But it can't be everything. But defining that, being able to be very surgical in terms of when alerts are sent, who they're sent to, and why is also key, because a lot of time, and this is very much a security problem, right? We have thousands of alerts a day, sometimes a minute. You tell me which one I should go and address first. Where's that needle in the haystack? You start sending that level of alerts to a developer, and you're just gonna, you'll go right to junk. There'll be that auto rule automatically, ignore. So communication is also key. So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing that screen, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about how we are addressing this in Secure State. Give me one sec. All right. So back to Secure State. For those of you who haven't seen the call, weren't on the call previously, this is our Secure State product. It is a SaaS offering, and it's backed by API, so very API friendly, API first mentality. And I'll talk about the APIs in a little bit. And right from a visibility, I'm just going to show you a little bit. We can do all kinds of queries in this environment. I have multiple accounts. I'll just show you the model. We have this graph model in the product. And so it allows me to, see things and then see what they're attached to, and then even build upon that. So I can really go deep into the infrastructure and understand how, one object can affect another. So for example, here's a key pair. Well, if let's say this key pair is attached to all these other instances, well, that's important if that developer leaves and that key is still being utilized or something like that. So again, part of the visibility part of it, we're not going to talk about that as much today. We talked about that in our last session, but just wanted to give a little information to those who missed last call. So let's talk about ownership and governance first, because I think that's definitely the first step. So the Secure State product has this feature called projects. And projects are a way for you to take your existing resource and assign it to a line of business or a group. So I'm just going to create a project. I'm call it 2021 Secure State. I'm going to create it. And so what I can now do is just add a resource that I want. And right, these are the only two that are available. I've already, so I have 4 accounts in here. The other 2 are already used. But let's say I just care about my GCP account to be added. And then here I can assign access. So I can go in here and find, myself, for example. I can select a role. I'm going to be maybe just a viewer. So I'm going to have read-only view in this project. Now I have multi-account access, so it's going to be a little bit different if I showed it to you. But now if I log in and I'm in this, you can see how there's I'm an org owner. But now, once I refresh this, let me just refresh let me just reload it. It's going to reload. You're going to see there's going to be a new project. And so this new project, this Cloud Journey Analyst is there, this 2021 CHSS viewer is there. So what that means is that if I was on, let's say, logging in with only that project access, I would log into here and all I would see would be only the data relevant to me, only that account. So you can see here, I only have 1 account. I have, only these findings. Certain features have been grayed out or I don't have access to. So it's a real nice way of sending that data out to your end users who need it, as opposed to having it all centrally managed, and limiting what they see. They don't need to see everything. Again, too much data is not always a good thing. So they can really focus on what they care about. And this allows you to also, once you set up established projects, you can do rules for specific projects. You can suppress by projects, alerts by projects. You can do all kinds of things that are project specific. So again, you're getting that communication and that information out to only the right people, as opposed to everyone.
I think it's a good point too that you mentioned that it's not everything, and that too much information can actually be a hindrance to acting quickly, so that you only have the information that you need, and then you can act quickly based on what you're seeing, as opposed to being overwhelmed by all of the information that you're getting.
Yeah. I mean, somebody once called it like information smog, where you just have too much of it and you can't see through it. It is a problem that you have to think about when you're rolling out something like this, and you're wanting to educate or send notifications to your end users who might not have ever seen something or thought about security. Right? It's not what they do. The next one I'm just going to touch briefly on is compliance. So, I talked about frameworks. So you can actually create your own custom framework in here, or you can take an existing one. Let's say, I think I have a clone one I've already cloned in here. So, hello compliance. I just took an existing one and cloned it. And then I can create my own control groups. And how it works is control groups are attached to controls, and then controls are attached to rules. And you can add more than one rule per control. So all those compliance people on the call, what this is all about. The rest of us, I'm sure it's a deer in the headlight kind of look. But at the end of the day, it's a methodology of managing your compliance. We're really flexible. You can, literally go in here, type, a control, it adds it, right there it is. Now I can go into here, add a control. Again, all the details that I want. And again, this is great because then you can filter against this. So once you have those frameworks established, it might show up under your compliance dashboard, or you might want to filter it for some of the findings, or do reports on it, or do alerts based on it. So again, it's another way of getting the right data to the right people. And this is one of those ways that you can do that.
And it's showing, Azure AWS and GCP all within the same dashboard for you, so you don't have to go in between different systems just to see all of the different controls that you have.
Exactly. And that's what we see a lot when customers are, when they get that point of pain, is as soon as you start going to multi accounts and multi providers, and it can also be in the same account. Let's be honest, if you have 12 to 20 AWS accounts going, you don't have a single place to see all that information, not easily. Being able to centrally manage, your findings, your compliance, your, all the alerts, again, makes it easy. You can kind of streamline it and make it all basically act the same. So it doesn't matter which account it is, where the data is coming from, or things of that nature. So that's pretty key. And we've actually, I'm showing you something that's a little, and currently in beta, but one of the providers we're going to be adding or have started to add is actually Kubernetes. So visibility in Kubernetes is the next kind of like level in that customers are asking for. How do I know if my pods are incorrect or something like that? But you can see here, I'll kind of grab one of these. You can see these are all workload container pods. And I can actually open one to show you kind of the graph, but this is all something new that we're adding. And so you can now look inside of a Kubernetes environment, not just the infrastructure. And back to this, one thing to note that, again, in terms of operations, is suppression is a big deal. So you can have all these, you might decide that, what, I want to suppress all of these findings. I don't care. Or I want to suppress these two. And I can say suppress the finding, because I'm an admin, I can actually do this approve upon submission, but you can put in how long I want, maybe I'm going to suppress it until just till Friday. We'll do the same for both of them. And I'm going to see, because we're testing the video, and now I submitted it, and now it's going to be suppressed. I didn't accept it. I haven't approved it yet. So it's still going to show up here, but now I have a way for the end users, when they do get these alerts, to say, hey, I need an exception. I need to be able to, get around this. And this is all part of that operationalizing. You can't just say thou shall. You have to be, give people opportunity to be like, well, can I get a little bit of a leeway for the next week or not?
Yeah. I think you hit on a couple key points around operationalizing. I think you and I talked that I sort of had a little bit of experience in security and compliance in a prior part of my career, but the challenge is, like, once you hook something like this up, it's overwhelming, right? Boom, like, you don't realize how many things are wrong until you've got some kind of solution, and it's like everything's red.
Right.
And so you're like, okay, I can't fix everything at once, so it's like you have to start prioritizing. And there's, you're collaborating, right? Because often the people that are going to first look at this are security team members, because they know what this means, right?
Yep.
And they have to then prioritize and then work with the developers to fix the really critical things that are going to put you out of business. And then you kind of iterate through this, right? Where it's like, okay, I fixed those. Now what's the next round? So this whole notion of suppression becomes important, because you want to filter out the noise in the beginning and then work towards it till you get to, like, okay, I fixed all the things that I think matters. Yep. Now the rest of them, I don't care. They're really not a big issue, so I'm not going to worry about them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we see customers, you can actually go. There's different ways you can suppress rules in here. You can actually disable a rule, i.e., you turn it off completely where we don't look for it. Or more likely, is customers are going to do a suppression where they're like, I don't want to know about this for a while, especially when they get started. Certain risks are just acceptable. And we have a workflow now where you can actually go in and say, again, at an org level, project level, you can say, at the org level, I'm going to suppress something for a week. And then this is what I really like that we've added, is this criteria. So, if it has this tag, if it's app called fit demo, that's my criteria. So I don't care. Anytime this tag is there, suppress their finding for a week. Yep. Or it could be said, environment dev, or again, there's a lot of flexibility, and you could do also multi-criteria. So you can say this plus, if it's, to my point, environment dev. If this criteria is there, auto suppress. Don't even send an alert. We don't care, right? Don't flood me. But in a week's time, if it's still there, you're getting an alert.
What's also important here is that it's auditable, right? You're tracking these changes, so you know when it was done, who did it, and all that stuff. Which is, sort of when you go back to sort of a world before this stuff, somebody would just go turn something off, and there was no record of it. And, it's like you can't find it, you don't know who did it. It's it's like you could really dig, obviously, if you wanted to go through every single log that ever existed.
Yeah,
but
nobody wants to do that.
It's like it was nightmarish, right?
Yeah. Well, and you can see here we're tracking how many we have active. I can even tell you like this suppression is going to be expiring in 14 days. So it's we have the data of who did it. We also have the data of who's the requester and who approved it. So yeah, you have all that capability around it.
Yeah, especially when things are external compliance issues, right? You really need to be able to track all that stuff because when auditors come through, they want to see that. And
yes.
Understand that.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And so, so we've talked about a bit of visibility. We've talked about kind of managing the rules, projects, and that. The next thing, we see is, well, okay, how do I get those alerts out to the right people? And so we have a pretty flexible alerting capability. So I'm going to go 2021, right? That's going to be the official alert of the day. And so again, multi-criteria. So I can say, I only care about, to your point, David, I only care about high, and only if it's high from my framework of, let's say CIS, AWS. And if it's in this cloud account, then send it to Johnny, whatever it is, right? So you can get really, really specific. You can even, I think there's, you can also use cloud tags as well. If you're really good about tagging resources, you can also add that as part of the criteria. So all of this stuff works together for you to be strategic in terms of who gets this alert, because you do not want to give them too many. And the key thing here is that we will send this alert in near real time, right? The product is really fast in terms, there's no 15-minute polling intervals. There's no hour. It's just, we're using an event stream to kind of trigger things very quickly. This is really big because if you send this to that end user, hopefully the developer who just hit deploy on their, pipeline, okay, well, that feedback's instant. They can look at their pipeline and go, oh, I need to change that template. Let me go destroy and rebuild. Mm-hmm. As opposed to if you send this alert to your SOC and 3 days from now he gets to it and then figures out, oh, I got to go to the developer and that's 3 more days. The developer would be like, yeah, I've already destroyed and redeployed 16 times since then. So, this is useless to me.
And you hit a good point around the notion of being able to send it to the developers versus like historically this stuff you'd catch it in operations, right? It'd be like it was already deployed, it'd been out there for days, weeks, months. You find it this way, and if it's tied in at the very beginning, the development they're doing is pre-production basically. So you're going to catch it in that phase, and that configuration never makes it out to production basically, right?
Yeah. And so I'll give you an example, right? So I think, one of the things I work with the team, and we did a simple CI pipeline with CodeStream, right? Which is the VMware pipeline tool. Just going to go to one that, actually worked because I've been playing with this and destroying things badly. So let me just grab, for example, this one. So what I've done here is I deployed a cart application, and then I get a token. I do a scan against this API. So Secure State has a bunch of APIs. So this is the finding API. Hey, does anything have a finding? And what I did is I filtered it to say, show me anything that's open that has this, dynamic code ID that I just deployed. I don't want to see everything that's open. And that has a value that's over, risk score between 65 and 100. Okay, so it does that. It brings me back the 6, findings. And then what I've kind of done is then, waited for an input at the end to say, okay, the scan came back. You have 6 findings. Do you want to approve and continue the build, or should we roll it back? Again, you could do this with any pipeline tool because it's a simple API call. But this is just showing you how you can move this information earlier in the process, get the right communication out to your developer, and reduce new risk being introduced into your production. And this is where everybody wants to get to. Sometimes it's difficult. A lot of people are on the journey, but there's some pretty easy things you can do. This is a very simplistic integration, but it works, and it can help.
Absolutely. And I just added into the chat as well, anyone for looking for more information on this process and then how you can secure apps in your dev pipeline using these tools in a little bit more detail. So it actually walks that through in a little bit more step-by-step for you if you're interested.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to build on that. I think I have a VMworld session that will kind of go over this as well. We'll go into more details of how to actually set up the VRA side with Cloud Assembly and CodeStream and Secure State. So I will have a session there at VMworld. So, sign up. It's free this year. So hopefully some of you who are listening to join us for VMworld.
Absolutely.
Yep. Awesome. VMworld's coming up, everybody. Commercial, VMworld.
Well, next year we'll be in person, I hope.
Yeah, that'd be fun. It'd be fun to do those in person.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much again for joining us for a second time. Who knows, if
we'll have you back. You've been a great guest.
Third time's a charm.
I appreciate it. I love being on this. This is a fun time.
Awesome. And as if you're joining late, as a reminder, we are focusing all on security solutions and topics this month. So stay tuned for our next session on Thursday, which is focusing on Kubernetes and container security. So be sure to check that out. Any last thoughts from anyone before we sign off?
It's fun having you, Hadar.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a good time as always, David, Lauren. I appreciate it, and hopefully this was insightful for folks.
Absolutely,
it was good. Good demo.
All right, thanks everyone.
All right,
Bye.
Bye-bye.
bye.